Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Nicole with Made from Scrap, and today I'm going to be doing the tutorial for the 6x6 mini album that I made for the Baby Dreams Boy collection using the light blue artisan cardstock. And today I'm going to be using the natural pearl sheen cardstock, and I'm going to be using the Baby Dreams Girl collection for the decoration. But I'm going to be going through the tutorial to make the album, and then I'll be decorating it separately, and I can show you a walkthrough after that in a different video. But if you want to see what the walkthrough looks like for the boy collection, I have that already available on my channel, and I will link it below for you. The album is 4 pages, and it's a 6x6, and the paper that I'm using today is from the stack of natural pearl sheen. This comes 25 sheets in the package, and I've used 13 sheets for this. But if you use a couple of a sheet of cardstock that you have on hand for some of the inserts instead of this, then you could get 2 albums out of one package. So just keep that in mind. And well, let's get started. So I just want to show you, out of those 13 sheets, these are my scraps that are left after cutting everything. And I went ahead and pre-cut so that we can move through this quickly. The other thing that I did is my chipboard. I have 2 sheets of 6x6 and one for the spine that is 2 1/4 inches by 6. And like I said, I already cut all the sheets to make this go a little bit faster, but the cutting guide is available in the comments below. So let's get started. I'm going to be using my handy dandy spacers here that are available at Country Craft Creations, and I also labeled each of these sheets in the cutting guide so that if you follow along with the lettering and you cut as you go, you would be using all of your scraps and making the most of your papers. So hopefully you do that and you get more out of your supplies. So you can see I like to use the sticky back double-sided tape to make this a quick process. And I also do my album covers the way that Tamara shows. So this makes this really quick process to put together an album this way. More. Also, if you use the spacers, make sure that you remember to use your yellow spacer for the spine so that you can put your spine piece down. I just went through forgetting about that, and then I had to use some undo to get the chipboard back off of the paper. But now we're on a roll. So they're very handy, but remember to use them like you're supposed to. Let's get started first with the spine piece. This paper is really pliable. Makes it really nice to work with. It's like butter. Like butter. So we're going to wrap these chipboard pieces camera has come up with the way to wrap this album very easily, or any album very easily, without there having to be this long piece all put together in order to wrap the corners. So we're just burnishing all of those sides so that we can get the corner pieces right there and know where to cut those out. So we're going to do a little snip here, and a snip there, and get it right to the corner of the chipboard. Cut out all 4 corners. On both 6x6s. And you just want to make sure to go all the way to that corner of the chipboard. Okay, got both of those. Now this one. Okay, one more thing. When you wrap this over the side, you want to make sure that you can stick your scissor up against it and just trim ever so slightly. That way you know when you fold over that you're not going to have overhang on the chipboard itself. So I am leaving 1/4 of an inch gap here. Hope you can see that between where I placed the cover and the chipboard edge of the spine. I'm just burnishing that really well. just working that edge and burnishing so that it is pliable. Okay. And rounded. And I'm going to do the next side. I'm just lining it up with the 6 there, no reason, just an even number so that it makes it easy for me to know whether or not it's straight. That's why I'm using the scoreboard here. And I'm going to place this glued edge down here, and I'm going to keep the edge of the chipboard at 1/4 inch away from the edge of the chipboard on the spine. You can see this makes it very easy to, in my opinion, to get your chipboards straight with each other. I'm going to burnish again. Really well. I'm going to burnish up against that chipboard piece. And then I'm going to work that spine piece that connects the two. So I'm going to bend it back on itself. And I'm going to use my burnishing tool, the bone folder, to push down. I'm going to push it back a little bit further and do it again. And that gives a nice rounded edge here for your book. So that. Okay. Alright, we have those pieces. And we're going to move on. And we're going to grab, those were A and B. And now we're going to grab N, as in Nicole or Nancy. Again, the order that these were cut was to take advantage of your, what I call drop pieces, or your pieces that came off of cutting the larger of the projects first. So this is N, and this is the cover to your spine piece right here. Okay, so we're going to glue that down. Just like that. I'll kind of eyeball center it. And then I'm going to take my bone folder again. I'm going to work this into the crease to lengthen those fibers of the paper. This is a cotton linen cardstock, so it's very pliable. And we're just loosening that up a little bit at a time. You don't want to stab through the paper, but Do it on the opposite side as well. Just giving it some shape. And this is going to help train the paper to go into that wedge when the cover closes. So now I'm just going to gently pull back the flap, place my glue on there, and then glue that down. Gonna do that other side. I'm not placing glue down in the wedge. I'm just placing the glue on this flap. The only thing I was doing before was training it to go into that indentation. So that the paper doesn't buckle. Okay, really giving this glue a good burnish. Okay. And now you can see when you bend it, it works very well. Train it a little bit more. There you go. Okay, next thing we're going to do is the hinges. And for the hinges, you're going to pick up piece F. So for piece F, you're going to turn this so that the 9.5 piece is at the top, and we are going to, I know this never happens to anyone else, right? Where is your scoring tool? He got up and walked away, apparently. Look under your ruler, Nicole. Okay, so for the hinge, all we're going to do is we place our 9.5 inch paper at the top, and we're going to score every 1/2 inch. This gives us a 1/2 inch gusset in between each page. That means there's going to be a space of a 1/2 inch, and it gives us the hinge part that measures 1/2 inch as well. So if you haven't made these type of hinges before, it looks daunting initially, but it is very easy to do, and it's very easy to figure out your measurements, because for each page you want in the album itself, you would have 1 inch, and then in between each page you would have a 1/2 inch. Okay, so now we have all of our score marks made, and what I like to do is put the shorter end down on the flat surface and bend against it. So So I'm going to do just that. The indentions are here on the top that I just made. I'm going to place the short end down. I'm going to push it back, and I'm going to burnish it. Then I'm just working all of those score lines right now. Okay, making them pliable, because we want our pages to be able to turn very nicely. By doing this where the short end is against the table and putting pressure, I find that it helps the hinges maintain their straight lines. Okay. Do this last one, and then I'm going to turn it over. Let's start on this side. Okay, so that was all of them. So now what we are going to do is the end, we're going to start at one end, and we're going to fold over that first score mark, and we're going to glue those two pieces together. And so what happens is that then you fold backwards on itself, burnish it, and when you've glued that together, that becomes your first hinge. This becomes your first gusset. And then you're going to have the next section become the next hinge. Just like this. And so on and so forth. So you can see how this starts to come together. I'm going to make a correction on my cutting guide here. I know what I did when I was putting together my initial album. I was using scraps. So I have a little bit too long a paper here. That's okay. You can just make that second album. Okay. So this paper really ends up being 5.5 by 5 7/8. Change. Okay. Let's go ahead and glue some of these together then. going to skip one and glue the next two together. Again, we're going to skip one and glue the next two together. Burnishing it in both directions because we want those pages to be able to turn very nicely. Okay, and the last two, remember to skip that one for the gusset. There you go, there's your hinge. Now, this part is not one that you want to forget. If you like your spine piece to be decorated. So if you don't mind having no decoration, then you would stick your spine down. But if you want something to be decorated underneath, you need to pick out your paper now. Like that. And you need to place that before you put the hinge down. So I'm going to do that and I will be right back. Okay, I've cut my paper, selected it and cut my paper. I cut it at 5 7/8 in length and 2 1/8 in width. I'm just going to quickly glue this down. And now we're going to fold in these ends. We're going to place glue along the back side of that hinge. We're going to put it down. It's one of the things that's really good about the glue. It gives you a little bit of working time. Make sure it's where you want it before you burnish it down and it starts to stick. Just a couple of seconds. Okay. Okay. That. Now we're going to move along to the base pages, and the base pocket pages are 11.5 by 5 7/8, and that's going to be H in your cutting guide. So you should have 4 of those. for the 4 pages. We're going to get our scoreboard in here. And we're going to place the paper with that 11.5-inch side at the top of the scoreboard. And then we are going to score at 5 3/4. So 5 3/4. All pages. So 11.5 at the top, 5 3/4 for the score. Okay, and then I'm going to place this against the corner of my scoreboard, and I'm going to use it to burnish that page down flat. Alright, that's all 4 pages. And now what I like to do is start at the back of the book. And I'm going to first set my page, the cut edge that came, up against the flap and put this down. Hold it down, okay, and then lay this down without moving it. So I press this page down in order to see where this lies. Then I want to see if it is straight, because that's dependent on if I put my hinge on straight or not, and we don't have any tool for that. So then pull away from the hinge just a little bit and straighten that page up. This one is the crucial one to do so that all of your other pages have a chance at laying flat. And what you want to end up with is your page being a little bit away from the edge of that flap so that it doesn't get held up on the gusset when you turn the page. Okay, so now that I have this straight, I'm going to hold this down, I'm going to peel up this portion, and then I'm going to hold the hinge down, pinching the page underneath it. Okay, I'm going to get my glue, and then I'm going to hold this page down like this and pull up the flap. So you can see I have a little bit of a gap there in between where the edge of the page is and where the hinge is. That helps the page to lie flat. And I'm just going to place a little bit of glue on that hinge. Make sure you hold the page down and then push the flap down onto the page and burnish well. Okay. Now what we're going to do is place a bead of glue along the hinge, but closer to the end of the hinge than the bottom. And then we're also going to place glue along the bottom of our inside page in order to close up this pocket. Okay. And then I'm going to fold this down, lie it down. I'm going to burnish. And this creates the pocket page. And your pocket is up here. I'm going to go ahead and speed up the rest of this for you while I do the other 3 pages. Okay, so this is where I lost sound on my video recording for some reason, but what I'm doing here is I've cut the decorative paper out for the inside covers, both front and back. That paper is cut at 5 7/8 by 5 7/8, and then I'm gluing and burnishing it down real good so that I can put the pockets on next. Okay, so now we're going to do the pockets for the inside, front, and back cover. And we're going to be scoring on 3 sides, one of the long sides and both short sides for this pocket. And you can probably tell here that I end up with a measurement that I have to correct, and I corrected it in a cutting guide already. So your pockets should be 6 7/8 in length and then 3.5 inches. But I've noticed that when I go through to actually do a dry fit of the pocket, and I have to trim it down. So burnish really well for your 3 sides, and then you can glue those on top of your decorative paper. Some folks like to wrap those 3 sides around their decorative paper before gluing down the decorative paper, and that's up to you. This is where I figure out, oh, it's too long, I did a measurement wrong, so let me cut off an inch off of that pocket and rescore it, trim it, and then fold it again. So if you want to put a decorative edge on your pocket, now is the time. Use one of your punches that you have, or do whatever embellishing that you want, unless it's on top of the decorative paper that you're going to put on top of the pocket. I chose just to leave it a square edge at the top of this pocket because I'm going to be putting some lace on anyhow. Okay, I'm going to be doing the top flaps here of the second and third page. It also has a 2-inch small pocket on it, so I'm going to refer to this page as, or this flap anyhow, as I1, and you're going to place it with the 10.5-inch dimension at the top, and you're going to score it at 1/2 inch and 6 1/4 inches, and then you're going to cut the I2 piece from your scraps, and that's going to be a 5 3/4 inch size by 2.5, and then the 2.5 inch side is going to be placed at the top of your scoreboard, and you'll score it 1/2 inch in order to make the bottom of that little pocket, and you're just going to glue the two sides of that pocket down once you have your decorative paper on. So here I'm scoring and burnishing those two flat pages, and again that is going to be for the first and third pages of your album. Here's the side flap, and the side flap piece is 11 inches by 4, and you're going to put the 11-inch side at the top of your scoreboard, and we're going to score that at 1/2 inch, 5.5, and 8 1/4. And this is going to be for the front first page, which is going to be glued on top of that top flat piece that we just scored. So here's the top flap piece. You see that 1/2 inch that's scored and burnished over. We're going to place glue on it, and then we're going to place that flap down on top of the first page. Sorry for my big head in the way of the camera. Trying to see if it's straight or not. But then you want to burnish that really well and get your excess glue off. And then we're going to be placing the side flap piece onto the front of this. So you can see the fold right there. There's the 1/2 inch piece right there, and we're going to be putting glue on it. And what we do is we make sure to align it to the edge and the bottom of that top flap. So it's going to be at the edge of the page, not at the edge of the hinge, because we want to make sure that that little bit of space that we left is maintained so that when the page turns, you have some space against the hinge that it's not going to get bound up. So you can see when you open up that side flap, it gives you some room not only for photos but also for some journaling if you like, and then you can open up the top flap as well. And now we're going to flip over to the back of the first page, and we're going to work on the sheets that were cut as item J. There's 8 of those, but you need 4 for the back of this page, and then 4 will be used for another page. So we're going to stick those in our scoreboard with the 6 inches at the top, and we're going to score each of those at 1/2 inch. So we're going to start off with the left-hand side flap, and we're going to glue that 1/2 inch flap and make sure that it is centered from top to bottom and glued onto the left-hand side. Burnish real well, remove the excess glue, and then we're going to move on to the right-hand side. And then after that, we're going to move over to the bottom flap and then finally the top. You can use a magnet here for the closure, or you can use seam binding, but that will hold that closed if you don't want to use just the weight of the paper itself in the pictures to hold it down, as long as you burnish it well. Okay, so this is going to be your other I1 piece. It's the top flap that goes onto the front of the 3rd page. So we're going to glue that down. And then once we have that down, we're going to move along to the last 4 of the J pieces, which are the flaps that go one on the left, one on the right, one on the bottom, and then one on the top, and they overlap with each other. You just want to make sure that you center them along the side of the page. Remember, on that inside part or the right flap, not to place it at the inside of the hinge, because that will hinder it from being able to turn well. Make sure to burnish really well. And after that, we're going to move on to the 2K sheets. So you're going to grab. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our 2K sheets, and those are going to go on the 2nd and 4th pages of the album. You're going to make sure to put the 12-inch side at the top, and we're going to score that at 1/2 inch and 6 1/4. And then you're going to turn it a 1/4 turn, and you're going to score at 5 3/4. Then you're going to make sure to burnish all of your score marks. And after you do that, we're going to cut out half of that 1/2 inch strip there, the bottom one. And the top one will be the portion that you attach to the page. And then we're going to cut along the slit from the center mark away from the 1/2 inch strip. So I'm just using my cutter here to make a straight cut. Use a sharp blade. I need to change that out. So now you can see we have the ability to fold these pages back on themselves. And that's the 1/2 inch strip that's going to attach to the book. And here we're going to do the 2nd page. So I'm going to speed this along for you real quick. Now we're going to put those two folded pages, those are flaps, onto the album pages, and we're going to glue that 1/2 inch strip to the inside of the page, being careful not to glue all the way down onto the flap. So we're going to leave a little bit of space. And now for the double pockets, you're going to grab your O and P pieces, and then you're going to grab your scoreboard again, and we're going to make sure that we're not going to put those on the flap, we're going to put it actually on the page. But you're going to start out with the O piece, and that's the bottom pocket, so you're going to score on 3 sides, one long side. And then the P piece, you're going to score on both short sides and score on one side of 1/2 inch, but we will not fold that last 1/2 inch along the long side of piece P. And you can see how I'm cutting out the corners here of the piece P. That's the top portion, the double pocket, and we leave that last long piece without folding it, but we fold all the rest of the scores and we burnish it really well. So just the 2 sides on here. And then we're going to grab our album, and we're going to place O down at the bottom and P inside of that. We're going to use that score line that's on the bottom to give us a guide to know if we're straight or not, so that we're going to use that to tuck us in. And I'm going to go ahead and glue here and place that bottom pocket. Let it adhere. Make sure it's straight. Now we're going to glue the two side tabs to that top part of the pocket. We're going to slide that down inside of the other pocket. And that way we know it's straight. And we'll just make sure to burnish really well. You might have a little glue that's oozing out. Just be careful to wipe that off. And I'll show you here, the reason we do it this way is so that we can have a longer piece. So you have the bottom pocket that goes in, and then you have the top pocket that's the same depth. Okay. Since those pockets are done, we're going to move on to the back of the last page of the album, which is a waterfall. And we're going to grab those 4 L sheets, place the sheet in with the 4 3/4 inch at the top of your scoreboard, and we're going to score all 4 of those at 1/2 inch. Then we're going to burnish all of those really well, of course. And we're going to start at the top of the page with the folded flap underneath, and we're going to glue that flap down so that it's flush at the top. And make sure your page is all the way to the outside. Make sure the flap of the waterfall is aligned with the outside of that page. You can see I'm moving it over there. And burnishing really well. And then you're going to align the next one and so on with the folded over flap tucked up against the 1/2 inch flap from the prior waterfall page. You can see here I just put that 1/2 inch flap down, and then I'm using the next page, the fold of the next page, to align with the prior page. And we have one left. Tuck it right up against there. Make sure to burnish, get all the excess glue off. It'll stick really well. And you've just created the waterfall. And that's it. That's our album. Now we have to just go and decorate. So the last thing we have to do are the few inserts. So these are from the scraps of our cut pages before. And if you want to do a corner chomper, go ahead and do a corner chomper at this point. But I've created 3 of these. And I'm just sticking them in the pockets. Next, I'm going to have these G sheets, and I'm also going to chomp the edges of those. And those are the inserts for each of the pages. So you should have 4 of those. Lastly, it's going to be a couple of extra pieces, again, that were leftover scraps. This is going to be M, and I scored at 2 1/4 on the long side. So on the 5 3/4 inch side, and then I put that in my front pocket. And then I have Q, which I'm going to go ahead and chomp the corners of and stick that in. Take off my sticky notes. Okay. And then lastly, I have the R pieces, which there's 2 of them, so on the 6-inch side I'm going to score it 1/2 inch and burnish that, and then I'm going to glue that second piece right on top of that 1/2 inch. I'm going to use my scoreboard here to make sure that's straight, and then I'm going to use my corner chompers to go ahead and do the corners of this one too. And that's just something a little different. Place it in there. And that is the book. Now if you don't like the pages sticking out of the top, you can go ahead and use circle punch or that kind of thing at the top of each of the pages on those base pages, and then cut those pages down to 5 7/8 if you want them flush with the pockets. So that's my book, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed it. Happy crafting. Bye!